If you love classic contemporary Christian music and the people that made it, please like this video and subscribe to our channel to help support us and keep us going. This is Stage Right, and I am your host, John Thorn. They say if you die with a handful of friends, you die a rich man. Well, I have several buses full, and I'm very excited to share them all with you. This is Stage Right. I am your host, John Thorn. Thank you for taking time to join me today. When I was a kid, I used to borrow my sister's turntable that she got for Christmas. And in the summer, I would run an extension cord and I would take the turntable out on the front porch of our house in the country. And I would sit and listen to Aerosmith's first album over and over and over. Now, I was a little young for the Beatles. I didn't get the Beatles until later on, but I loved Aerosmith. So about that same time, there was this band, this kind of cool guy. They had a band with a drummer, and he showed up at my dad's church, and the guy's name was Sammy Hall. So I don't know if you've ever heard of Sammy Hall, but he was kind of ahead of his time for the church. He was kind of like a trailblazer. He was a little rock, a little singer-songwriter, had an ensemble behind him, some background singers and stuff, and had huge impact on me. But his group, they would play at our church and stay with us, and my mom would feed him, and sometimes we'd go snowmobiling, and he had a bus driver named Dave. So one night they all wanted to go snowmobiling, and Dave was 6'8", and my dad was 5'10", but my dad's snowmobile suit is the only suit that would fit him, except it was too short, but it fit him. Like he could get into it. So he puts the snowmobile suit on, and the arms came up to his elbows and the legs came up to his knees, but he got to ride the snowmobile, and he had a blast, and everybody had a blast. And we all laughed at Dave because he looked so goofy in that snowmobile suit. It was very memorable. So fast forward to 1989, I go to Toledo, Ohio. I had just left Truth, and I went to Toledo, Ohio to see some friends of mine who were playing for Margaret Becker, and they were opening for Michael W. Smith on the Eye to Eye tour. So I went to see him. Kip came out and got me from the crowd, and we walked up the center aisle, and it was kind of a weird thing because the center aisle went up steps and went right up on the stage. So we walk up the center steps, go straight up on the stage, take a left, go back through the curtain into this maze of road cases and this kind of makeshift hallway, and there's people everywhere. And we're walking back towards the dressing room, and all of a sudden this guy catches my eye. And I'm like, dude, hang on, I got to go say hi to this guy. I walked up to this guy and said, "You're Dave North." He said, "I am. Do I know you?" And I said, when was the last time you wore a snowmobile suit that was 6 sizes too small? And he started laughing, and he said, "Oh my God, you're John Thorn. You're all grown up. What are you doing here?" So I told him about Kip and Jeff, and we had a good laugh, and we hung out for a few minutes. Then later on, went back up and talked to him for a while, and we reminisced, talked about Sammy and how he ended up driving for Hemphill Brothers and why he was out on the Michael W. Smith tour, and he'd driven Aerosmith and all these, rock bands that were like so important to me when I was a kid. And it was just hilarious. It was awesome. But it was funny because looking back on that, the experience with Sammy Hall, those guys coming to our house, snowmobiling and all that, that was the first time that I had a taste of what would later become contemporary Christian music. So I was exposed to him. Then later on, a friend of mine named Rocky exposed me to the Imperials. And then it was Russ Taff and the Imperials. Then it was Joe English and the Archers and Second Chapter of Acts and Keith Green and Mylon Lefevre. And then all of a sudden, I was bit. The bug had bit me, and I was all in on contemporary Christian music because I realized if music moves me the way it does, I know it moves other people as well. And that realization is what motivated me to want to play contemporary Christian music. And now a quick word from our sponsor, Hey Rockstar, before we're joined by Pete Orta.
Hey Rockstar provides digital marketing software and services to generate more leads, more exposure, and more revenue for your business or organization. Let Hey Rockstar amplify your awesomeness.
Amplify your awesomeness with Hey Rockstar. HeyRockstar.com. Go check them out. So the man who needs no introduction shall be introduced as the great, dear, amazing friend, Mr. Pete Orta. How you doing, Pete?
Great, dear, and amazing.
You know what? I could keep going, but for the sake of time, I don't want to use all of our time up on your introduction.
Oh, man.
But I could keep going. There's a lot of adjectives I could use to describe you.
I'm not John Schlitt. I don't have that long of an introduction, but yeah, I'll take those 3 words.
That's awesome, dude. So how the heck are you?
Man, I'm doing good. I miss you a whole lot.
I miss you too, buddy.
On a scale of all the people I know, you're top 10, man.
Top 10. I'll take it. Any day, I'll take anybody's top 10 list. And it doesn't even matter what the list is. They can put me on their bad list as long as I'm on their top 10 list. Love me, hate me, but if you're in the middle, get out.
Oh, I love your style.
So speaking of loving your style, dude, that new promo pic you have with your new D'Angelico guitar is amazing.
Oh, you dude. Okay, so shout out to D'Angelico. I've got to say they have been amazing to me. Ernie Ball too, my old string family.
Right.
Anyway, I've been in missions for 10 years. I haven't played in over 20, and when I picked the guitar back up, and we can go all into that, those 2 companies were right there with me. So, and that guitar is an amazing piece of work. And yeah, my daughter killed it. My daughter's been doing photography and videography and that kind of stuff for a long time, since she was a kid. Got her in a little small camera, and now she's doing things with it that I don't understand. But I'm blessed to be able to just ask my daughter, "Hey, can I get a new promo pic?"
Right.
that would usually cost me thousands of dollars.
Right.
And, since I raised her, she owes me here and there.
That's funny. Dude, there's 3 things about that picture that are pretty crazy.
Okay.
There's the car.
Okay.
There's the guitar, and then there's you. Like that thing looks like it looks like it would be like an Elvis album cover. It's like something Elvis would have done in the 50s.
Most of our peers were just amazed that I could squat down like that.
And get back up.
Yeah.
Well, it's the jujitsu, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah, it's the jujitsu.
Right on. All right. So for those that don't know you, now the point of the show, I don't know if you're aware of what the point of this really is. I have some amazing friends, and you're one of them. And I wanted to feature my friends because we live in a world now where people jump up and down and tell you they're great, but they don't know how to do anything, and they think youth and beauty are achievements. And I wanted to take the friends that I have that are incredibly gifted and incredibly talented, that have achieved incredible things in their life, and I wanted to feature them. Tell all the stories we had and
Cool.
And talk about the fun we had and all of that.
Yeah.
When I was thinking about you were such a raw, emotional guitar player. At what point, after you learned to play the guitar, or as you were learning, at what point did you know you were good?
That's a pretty funny question, because especially the way you asked it. I've been playing guitar since I was 4 years old, and I still have that guitar. There's people out there that understand my upbringing that know that it was therapy for me. And it came with a little Mel Bay book, and I was a closet player. I learned my chords and things like this, and I was in my room for many years, kind of just toying around with it, not really even considering myself a guitar player, never talking about playing an instrument. It was just something that I would just noodle around with. And I remember one time my wife, when we were dating, I was over at her house and we were watching some TV shows or something like that before Netflix. And I said, "Hey, I've got to go, I've got to get to a guitar lesson." She was like, "Oh, okay." She goes, "How's that coming along?" I said, "Oh, it's pretty good." She goes, Are you learning anything?" And I stopped because I'd never talked about it.
Right.
And I said, "Oh, I'm the teacher." So it was just something I never, and I think I was probably 20 years old or 18 or something like that at the time. And it's just something I never, I don't know, be like bragging that, that I could tie my shoes.
Right.
And man, I used to just play along with my friends. Man, there was a guy in high school at Lubbock High. His name was Michael Adami. Matter of fact, I kind of reconnected with him, who was and still is a phenomenal guitar player, man. And I would pull some things from him. Another guy, Scott Hendricks, in school. I remember these guys because they were such a big influence. And when you are living in Texas, man, when you play guitar, you cannot be a slouch. I don't know if I've heard a bad Texas guitar player. So
not one plugged in out loud.
not in Lubbock, Texas. Shout out to, man, John Ellis at the time, and John Sprott and David Brandon and Scott Ferris. I mean, I could keep going, and I've left out some greats that, to me, man, were at such a high caliber. And so you're just fostering this talent in this environment in Lubbock, Texas, where you have to drive 5 hours to get anywhere. And so I remember in the 80s, walking into a music store and going, hey, I want some, 8-gauge strings for my whatever, Ibanez, whatever, and so that I can blow on the strings and play with ease. And I remember a bunch of bluegrass players sitting around the music store when I was asking for these little light, hair fine strings, and they were like, boy, he get you some real strings. You play like a man. You need some helicopter cables. You ain't get no tone out of that. Now, why is your action so low? You need to raise that thing up and drop your pickups down. And so they were just educating me on like what tone was, that was the most important thing. And at that time, it wasn't really ease, and it wasn't, playing 100 miles an hour. It was the attack. It was the emotion. It was
made you work harder for it.
Guts you put into it. Yeah. And I always felt like and in Texas, it's like, if you're not wrestling with your guitar, and if you don't lose some nights to your guitar where you didn't whip it,
right,
but it whipped you, you're not a guitar player.
Man, that is so true.
I mean, and that's the true Texas grit type of thing that I grew up in. So as far as like understanding that I was good, that wasn't really a thing. It was just, I was growing, and my hands were getting stronger, my strikes were getting harder but with more tone, and it was something that was respected and still is in Texas.
Right.
So man, when I didn't know I was good until I went to Nashville.
Oh my goodness.
And yeah, I didn't even know the names of my guitar strings. So that's that's a long story.
So they didn't include those in the Mel Bay book.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Or you skipped that page.
I went right to the end. So it wasn't until I got to Nashville, and I knew that I was a small fish in a big pond, so to speak. And I remember, the management company at the time, Todd White and those guys asked me, so you're going to move to Nashville. 1 million people move to Nashville every year, and only 1 in a million make it. What makes you, I remember this clearly, what makes you think that you're going to come in and outplay and take the jobs of these triple scale session players like Huff and these guys? And my response was like, I'm not saying that I am. I'm just saying that I can try to outwork them. Right. And I'm going to do my best to outwork them, which, man, you can't outwork those guys either. But it was, the response was truly showing my worldview that I really didn't know. And it wasn't until I started hearing it from industry peers that were professionals that I was like, wow, right, I guess I have an exceptional gift for this.
Well, it's funny because, you were talking about tone. People that get paid for a living to play understand this, but most everyday guitar players or bass players or whatever, they don't understand the tone comes from the fingers. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the fingers are linked to the soul of whoever's playing it. Yes. And that's why tone,
note choice.
Yes.
And how much skin is touching, you're allowing to touch the string, and when you come off of it, and there's just so many little things that add up to what your voice is.
Right. No matter what guitar you pick up, it's going to sound like Pete Orta. Yeah. That's the beautiful thing about it. And that's also what you brought to the table when you got to Nashville. It was you It wasn't about Dan Huff or about, Jerry McPherson. It was about you. And that was what was awesome about it. Let's go back to the beginning of when you moved to Nashville, when you and I met and we first started our thing.
Well, I'll tell you what, when I moved to Nashville, I got called in for some auditions. I didn't even know what this was. From a small town, I shouldn't say small town. Lubbock's not a small town anymore, but to me, it was a small town. So I remember showing up to John Schlitt's house, and it was for his solo record, Unfit for Swine.
Right.
And I had learned both guitar parts. I just got out of surgery. I had my gallbladder removed. And so I couldn't lift my amp. So I had a friend of mine, Russ Lloyd, help me unload my amp. And he's the one that told me about the auditions. And I didn't know how this was all set up. All I knew is I was going to come in and I was going to play this record. And I was going to jam with some dudes. And it was going to be a yay or a nay. So I'm walking up and to this audition. And it's at John Schlitt's house. And man, I set up my guitar, say hello to everybody, set my rig up, get my tone. And it was obvious you were the band leader at the time. But you got to understand, like, I didn't even know what a band leader was.
Right.
I just knew you were in charge. I knew, you were taking charge. You were assigned to whatever. I didn't even know your role. I still don't even know what your role was. I think you had a big influence, if not calling the shot, if I was the guy chosen. But it was, I remember playing the gig and just knowing I was so confident in the parts. I actually had the major parts of both guitar parts picked out and combined together, and I could do both parts. I was ready for one or the other or both.
Right.
And I remember at one point, man, we were playing, and I remember you instructing me at the beginning, one of the songs.
Save Me.
What was Save Me? It was that one. And you were like, hey, lay back on that. Like you were trying to get me to go in pocket. And so, man, I was taking instruction from you, got the pocket down. And I think that's about all that you had said to me. And all I remember is in the middle of one of the songs, man, I dropped to my knees.
Yes.
I start ripping the solo to it. My eyes are closed. And like the band stopped at some point, and it was like a Back to the Future moment, like Marty McFly. And I just kind of opened one eye, and I was like, "Why did everybody stop?" I still don't know. Probably like, dude, this is you're over the top, bro. You're just extra right now. But dude, I just wanted to give it my all.
Well, I remember vividly why we stopped. We weren't auditioning Marty McFly. We weren't looking for Marty McFly.
It was totally a Marty McFly moment, man.
And I remember John, because you were so over the top, John, now this is the way I remember it. I wish I would have asked him last week when he was on the show. What I remember about that is he was auditioning you and a couple of the guys, Kevin Brando being one of the guys. And it was my idea to say to John, look, these two guys are perfect together because they're completely different. It's just like Aerosmith. It's like Joe Perry and Brad Whitford. And Kevin had a great voice and was a really, really good guitar player, but you were so different. You were like the sass and he was the shine.
Yeah, man.
And the two of you guys together, that whole band was just, it was killer.
I know, man. I felt unbridled. It was awesome.
Now, once you knew you had the gig, and once Kevin knew, and once we all were just in rehearsals, once we had 3 weeks in Schlitt's basement while he was drywalling, we worked our butt off.
We did. We worked hard. We were a tight band.
Yeah, and that was some of the funnest rehearsals I've ever been through, because the one thing about you and Kevin, you both wanted to be good.
Yes.
And I had done it enough where it was another, 3 weeks of rehearsal for another tour and another set of albums.
Dude, you had played with some monster guitar players.
Well, yeah.
Brian Wooten and, man.
Yep, James Dillingham, Dave Cleveland.
Yeah, monsters.
Yeah, I'd played with a lot of great players. But it was fun because you guys were younger and you had so much enthusiasm. And it was one of the most unique and special times of my life. I mean, it truly was a blast. And Every time I see John, every time Schlitt and I have lunch, we sit and just go back through that tour, those rehearsals, and just laugh. we just have a blast reminiscing.
Man, I use some of those times to try to help young people if they'll listen, and with my kids who do listen. But I tell people all the time, because everybody's waiting for an opportunity and then they're going to come to the plate and really deliver. And I use a baseball analogy. It's like, you don't wait till you get into the major leagues to be able to hit a 100-mile-an-hour fastball.
Right.
I mean, I could play like what you saw when I could play like that when I was 16 years old.
Right.
And I think that's what a lot of people, that young guys that might be listening now, that are maybe searching for, trying to hit an opportunity or trying to, man, you've got to already do it before you get there, because you get exposed.
Right. You do. And it only takes one bad day to set you to the back of the line.
Yeah. I didn't know that those auditions were going to happen that year. I mean, I didn't know what I was going to walk into. I had no idea. I was definitely ready. And I always practiced like a professional. Matter of fact, those rehearsals were no different than the way I practiced back home in Texas.
And I believe that about you, because I believe you were doing the Marty McFly in your bedroom.
Yes.
I totally believe you is what you did.
Yeah, man, you really you were one of the guys that I really just stayed really tight to. A couple of guys really coached me through that beginning stage, because I don't know how in the world, but I was smart enough to know that I was good at that point, but I knew I wasn't smart enough to know that I knew how to do the gig. It's different. I played the parts, but I didn't have the gig. I mean, as far as like, okay, you're hired, you're gonna, you want to be a part of this. I knew nothing about how they rehearsed or going to sound check or anything like that.
Being on time.
All that kind of stuff was something that, man, I stuck close to you and Jeff Gallup. You two guys groomed me to be the professional that I eventually became. And it was everything. I remember things with you that were in rehearsals. Man, I was just very teachable.
You were.
Anything that was said, anything that was done. And I was teachable because I had the talent to be able to pivot and shift gears. When people are unteachable, it just shows they only have one gear. I had a ton of gears. I was like a Swiss Army knife. Nothing could offend me. Well, I don't like that part. I don't think you should do that. Or you should lay back here, or you should be on top of the beat or head of the beat here. I need you this. Fine. It's done. So when you are truly, you're mastering your craft.
Right.
This is the type of situation where you don't have to be upset because certain things are called. So I remember it was easy for me to be teachable.
What's funny, Pete, is you're one of in fact, you might be the only guitar player that I worked with that never got affected by the negative.
Heck no.
Trying to rein it in. You were like you were an enigma, because you were this wild and wacky, young, energetic dude that was like a horse that hadn't been broke yet. But yet you would stand there and listen and be teachable and learn.
I'm the same. I'm still the same. I mean, my demeanor when people meet me is like, the first thing I put off is like, unbridled, wild stallion guy that's rebellious and full of piss and vinegar. And, but I don't know what it is. It's just a passion in me, but I'm very much teachable, and I'm listening, and I'm there to build the team and be there for the greater good. And it's a wild dichotomy. I don't know where it came from. Maybe I just don't want to look stupid.
It's a remarkable trait that you have all that ability to just unleash this internal monster of music, but yet you're bridled enough and you're contained enough to play and do what's best for the moment.
Dude, you taught me how to conduct myself on a bus. You taught me, hey, don't get on first. Let the veterans get on first. Let the veterans, once everybody's on, then you can get on first. And then you sit with your bag in your lap, and you sit at the front of the bus, and you let all the veterans come in and pick the bunk that they want. And then you take the leftover. I mean, everything imaginable, how to conduct yourself at hotel room with a roommate. This is what you do, blah, 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 blah. And everything from playing live to setting up, sound check, the whole deal. Denny Keatsman, man, was a major part of that. You were a major part of that. Jeff Gallup was a major part. I remember the first time I went on a bus, man, I forgot who told me. They were like, see that guy right there? Don't even get near him. That guy, if you're on his bad side, it's over. You're over.
You're talking
And
about
it was
Gallup,
Jeff
right?
Gallup.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he did, man. He just looked like a big old angry rhino when he got, man, him and I, dude, Jeff Gallup is a sweetheart. If you know your job,
Yep.
the professionals treat you well. If you don't, they don't treat you well. And they shouldn't treat you well because you shouldn't be there because you're costing people time and money and they feed their families this way. And I think, man, when people ask me, what do you miss most about the music business? You know, when they find out like some of my past, and I always tell them the speed of the game. I miss the types of people that I would work with, the types of people that cared about their craft, the types of people that took it serious, the types of people that, you know, didn't make excuses, kind of just A-type personalities, and we all like running at the same speed. That right there, you don't get that in very many parts of the world.
That's exactly why I'm doing this podcast. It's exactly why I'm doing this podcast, because the people that we were part of are just so unique and so stinking good.
And people that are listening right now, instead of being offended, it should inspire them.
Yes.
And it would do them good to think to kind of consider themselves guilty that they're not like that right now.
Right.
Because if you already think you arrived, you're never going to push. And I never thought I arrived. I still don't think I've arrived at anything. I tell my kids, you'll never outlearn me because I'm a master student.
Right.
It's not because I'm faster, I'm quicker, I'm smarter, anything like that. It's because you can't outlearn me. And so it's just a challenge to my kids. And that environment that we were in at that particular time was like that. And I believe there's pockets like that in Atlanta, in LA, in New York, you know, Nashville, things like this. But I'm telling you what, there's not very many pockets in the world, and the average person doesn't even know what we're talking about right now, but they should seek that out.
Well, sadly, it's all been replaced with an app.
God.
I mean, everybody's, while they're listening to this, they're staring at their phones if they're listening. rather than practice,
right.
Rather than doing a G major scale while they listen. Like
McFly,
you and I, when we were kids and we were learning, man, we would sit and listen to records for hours and stay up all night and watch TV with the volume off and play to albums and stuff. And kids nowadays, they don't even bother picking up an instrument. They have an app that makes music.
Well, let me tell you what the problem is, where the hiccup is. We didn't have social media. We didn't have this types of things. So in order for me to learn this, I had to learn it from another human being, like face to face, eyeball to eyeball, belly to belly.
Right.
And the thing is right now, if you want to go look up anything on the internet, how to whatever.
Yep.
I mean, if you having marital issues, or you're a new mom, or you name it, from running Logic Pro X to the content is coming from a 30-year-old.
Yep.
Or under.
Yep. I know.
Because the older people, they're not online, like they don't know how to publish. They don't know how to create a website or a blog. They don't know how to, start a podcast and things like this. So this is the first generation where it's like third graders learning from third graders.
Yep.
12 graders were learning from 12 graders. 20-year-olds learning from 20-year-olds. 30. When I get online, I can tell I'm reading content from a 30-year-old. How to be a great mom, and she's got one child that's 3, and she's already writing blogs about everything.
Right.
And it's kind of, we're not, because the older people have been caught and do not know how to get on the internet and post their wisdom. It's like this big echo chamber of, maybe it's good information. I don't want to put them down, but it just doesn't have wisdom to it that would have the weight, that would have that impact. And you can tell when it's thin, when content is really thin. And man, hopefully this podcast will help, even put some of those older guys in front of them, where, hey, we're putting it in a digital format. Here's the information that you're getting. And what I'm trying to say right now is this: sometimes it's good just to get off the internet and track down someone who can mentor you in that area. And not everybody's qualified. This is what the rule I always went by. never, take advice from somebody that has the desire that you want,
Yeah.
that has the goal that you desire, I should say.
Yeah.
Take advice from that person that has that goal. They've already accomplished it.
Do what they did.
Yeah, and do what they do and copy with. I mean, man, I remember being influenced by certain guitar players, certain people in their lives. I would wear what they wear and play what they played. I would use the same language and dialect that they did. I mean, I just was copying them, and then you develop your own voice from that, and things had more soul back then as they do now. So, I know guys that say that they're musicians. I know guys that say they're producers. They're in their 20s and their 30s. They don't even know how to mic a guitar amp.
Right.
I learned that from old guys. I learned that from guys that the way they edited was taking a 2-inch tape and a razor blade. And when the door opened, they were freaking out because they thought all the parts were going to fly everywhere. Like, watch where you're stepping. And you're learning how to do really, really old, soulful things through the old guys. And the internet doesn't have that.
Well, the other thing to me, Pete, part of the equation is the 30-year-olds that can do it are dismissive of those that are older that can't do it just because they can't do it. They think because they can't do it because of technology that they have nothing to offer because they can't use technology.
Yeah. Well, we've actually touched a 1073.
Right. That's right.
We know what it does. We
Yes.
know how to get it to its breaking point. We know the process behind it, the why.
Yeah.
We know all the whys behind everything. And so, it's just lost. And hopefully it comes back. Hopefully, one-on-one mentorship comes back like that. And maybe just even one young person that hears this, starts to track down some older people and to learn the roots of what they're doing.
I was talking to a buddy of mine last week when I called him to see if he'd be interested in doing the podcast. And I won't say who, but it's one of the guys from For Him. So there's a 25% chance you'll get it right if you try to guess which one it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I said, do you still do voice lessons and vocal coaching? And he said, heck no, I gave that up a long time ago. And I said, why? Dude, you got an amazing voice and you've sung for 40 years. And he said, everybody already thinks they can sing.
And that journey on vocals, like anything, it's never over. You don't arrive. John, it just reminds me, I live currently in a small town, and my jiu-jitsu coach, his wife, she asked me to judge a talent show. And I was like, that'd be cool. I've seen American Idol, all that kind of stuff. It's like, man, that would be cool to kind of coach some young people and, help them out and give them some advice and encourage them and maybe bring some reality to a few of them. And so I was really excited. So there were 3 coaches, and they announced all of us, and all 3 of us. And, 2 of them were a couple of older ladies that had been piano teachers, and it was a really, really small town, and then people knew them in their community, really sweet ladies. And then they announced me, and of course my accolades are very different than theirs. They taught piano lessons or vocal lessons for 30 years at such and such high school, and it was great stuff. And I'm not saying anything about me other than it stuck out.
Right.
The different things that are attached to my resume or whatever.
Grammy winner.
Yeah, it stuck out. They went down the whole Wikipedia list, and they didn't have to. It was sweet, but we go through the whole show and we're doing all that, and I only say that to set this up. At the end of the whole deal, it was all over, and we had first place, second place, third place. Long story short, at the end of it, I decided, hey, I'm going to hang around and just be available for people. And I was confused because I was just standing there. Not one person, John, out of the entire auditorium, including the singers and musicians,
right,
came and even said hello. And I was confused because if I was a basketball player and some second, third string bench player from, Golden State was there and I was in high school, I would, hey,
I know.
Can I buy you lunch? Can I buy you dinner or coffee, something? Give me an hour. Like, that's the type, we just described. That's the type of person that I was.
Yep.
Of course, that's probably why I did what I did.
Yep.
And they will not. But I was saying I didn't want to be praised or anything. I was there to really contribute. Like I'm at the age right now, 49 years old. I want to give back. So it wasn't, I wanted my ego stroked. I wanted to give back. And so I was really confused for a couple of days. And And so I talked with Carissa Thompson, my jiu-jitsu coach's wife. I was like, I'm confused. So like, how did the event go? She's like, oh, it went well. I'm confused. I got one question for you. And I explained it to her. She goes, you want to know why nobody spoke to you? It's like, yes, because it's riddling me. They already think they arrived.
Oh my gosh.
Oh.
Not intimidated.
Yeah.
They've already arrived. You guys are equal. Well, I have a similar story. Let me just take 30 seconds and tell it real quick. I worked at a church, and there was this youth pastor that decided he was going to learn to play guitar so he could play in the worship band and lead worship for the youth group. And literally 2 weeks after he started playing guitar, I was having a conversation one day with this guy that was 10 years older than me, one of the guitar players, and we were talking about guitar strings. Now, you know how specific guitar strings are.
Oh, yeah.
And this guy walks in, interrupts, and starts telling us which guitar strings he likes to play literally 2 weeks after he picked up the instrument. And I just, it's like, oh, I'm tired of talking about me. What do you think about me? It's just like, oh my God.
Man, I really do think it's the whole Jesus Nicodemus thing.
Yeah.
You know, Nicodemus had to meet Jesus at night on the rooftop because he was supposed to, you know, he was like a Supreme Court judge, Sanhedrin. I think there was only like 72 of them at the time. And so how embarrassing was he to approach Jesus with these simple elementary questions that he had, or couldn't even answer them as Jesus kind of poked at him.
Right.
And it's kind of the same now, man. There are hundreds, thousands, millions of people walking around like they know it all, but they don't. They just Googled it the night before.
Yep.
And when you Google it the night before just to pass the test, it doesn't mean you know it.
No.
And so that is the culture of today. Yeah, they're passing the test. They're giving you the information.
Yep.
But they're just missing the essence of it all.
Yeah, for sure. Because the learning and the knowing part are the fun part.
Yes. I love the process.
The friends that you and I got to work with and tour with and do music with and live this crazy life of excellence is the best way I can think to put it right now. We all did it the same way.
Yes. Isn't that crazy?
Like we all did the same thing.
Yes, we all had the same formula, same pattern.
Yes, and it had nothing to do with anything other than a passion and a love for music and the desire to be great.
Yeah. I think that's a lot of Generation Xers, though.
Yeah.
There's been more entrepreneurs ever amongst the people of Generation X than any other generation.
Yeah.
You know, we grew up with movies of overcoming and being the best, and yeah, some of them were cheesy and things like that. But that's the worldview that we had.
Right.
Compared to now.
Right. No, it was full of hope. It was full of optimism. It was full of, you want to go to the moon? You can go to the moon.
We did.
Now it's like, why would I want to go to the moon?
The moon doesn't exist.
The moon doesn't have Wi-Fi.
The moon's flat.
So you and I were on the road in 96 and 97. Petra, what was Petra like the last, because from 96, that was the Unfit for Swine stuff. And then, now I don't know if you remember this or if you even know this. Did you know that John, during the rehearsals for Unfit for Swine, the day we started rehearsals, did you know John told me to get you and Kevin ready for Petra?
No, are you kidding me?
No, that was part of my assignment. That's part of why I was there.
I had no idea.
Well, he loved you guys, but he, do you remember the day we were doing the show on the Unfit for Swine tour and you were sitting across the table from the promoter's son and you were playing with food in your mouth and tomatoes and stuff and we're making the kid laugh?
I don't.
Well, I do. Yeah. John said, when we walked out, he looked at me and said, buddy, I know you've been working on them. He said,
are you serious?
He's like, now what Pete was in there doing, that's okay for this tour, but he can't do that on the Petra tour.
I sure did.
He said too many people will be watching. So when, so as we were rehearsing and the whole touring thing and everything, now you got to keep in mind, I did not start out in Petra. You started out in Petra with John Schlitt and Petra. The fact that you walked into that room with John and those guys and then went from that to Petra, man, that was like an instant launch.
Yeah, it was a whirlwind.
I want to see if you remember this story or not, and then I'm going to get back to it.
Oh, boy.
So we're playing Lubbock at the county fairgrounds, and if you remember that day, it was cold and rainy.
I don't, but I remember being there.
Okay. Well, I don't know. I have this weird thing where I just remember a lot of details. We get there and there was no catering, right? There's
Okay.
no catering. Oh, you don't remember that either?
No,
Oh, that's funny. Well, you were probably gone all day because you were with family and friends. So it wouldn't have even occurred to you till you got back for sound check.
True.
So it comes dinner time and there's no catering and there's people in line to get in and Louis doesn't want to go out, and there's a little burger place, about 30 or 40 yards down from the main entrance. It was like a giant, what do you call that? Was it like a rodeo? It wasn't a barn with a dirt floor. It was a concrete floor, but it was like a big 4-H arena or something, like a typical fairground.
Man, your memory's crazy.
So Louis, you know how Louis could get.
We'll leave it at that.
So Louis was just going on and on. I'm starving. There's no catering. I'm starving. I don't have time to go get food. I'm starving. I don't want to walk out there with all those people out there. They'll just, I don't have time to do it. The show's going to start. I just don't, this is so stupid. But he was he was tired and hungry.
Oh, yeah.
Which, look, tired and hungry is like the worst combination ever, right? So I just said, Louis, I'll take care of it. So the show starts and you guys start playing, because this was in 97 when I was road managing Petra. So the show starts. I walk down to the burger place. I get a burger, I get fries, and I get a Coke. And I walked up the stairs to the stage, and John's talking. It's between songs. And I walked out with Louis' food, and I slammed it on his floor tom, and I said, now stop whining. There's some food. So everybody starts laughing. Like, the people started laughing because Louis is sitting there eating cheeseburger while John's talking. And John turns around and says, what? Louis, are you eating? He said, where did you get food? And Lou was just sitting there munching, and just was like, then he, like, instantly, it was like the Snickers commercial where he just snapped back into himself, and he was happy. He was like, but I just said, dude, now stop whining. Here's dinner. Here's some food. Now just shut up.
You told several of those. I've got one. I just don't even know if I should tell it.
We'll tell it, and if it's too much, we'll edit it out.
Well, I remember he was complaining about he had to have half and half. Remember that one?
Yes.
He had to have half and half on the bus. So for you guys that haven't, been on tour, you get the management will give you a little list and say, hey, what do you want on the bus? Because it's not a prima donna thing. It's just you're on the road so long, you want to be as comfortable as possible
and familiar to it's close to home as we can make it for you.
Yes, because it gets grueling. So Louis starts freaking out because there is, out of one time out of I don't know how many hundreds and thousands of shows he's done, there's no half and half milk on the bus. So he kept complaining about it, and you finally had enough, and you got up and you went to the refrigerator and you pulled out some milk. And you dumped half of it in the sink, and you filled it up with the rest of it with water. So there's your half of it. Oh, that was classic.
And knowing Louis, he probably laughed his butt off.
Oh man, I think he did. It stopped him.
It did. See, that was always the goal. Just not.
He had a
just
weird
stop.
grin on his face after that.
Right.
But that's sometimes the only language he would hear at the time. I love that guy.
Well, and you know me, dude. I really only speak one language. It's like let's just deal with it directly.
Come on, Lou. You can be a man or a mouse.
So through those Petra years, though, did you get 1 or 2 gold albums?
Let me see. I see one here. No, do I? Hold on. I'm missing one.
Your kids took it to show and tell.
I think, yeah, I'm looking around my studio. I'm missing one. I think I got 2 from them. I got one over there from Jackie Velasquez, a Crystal Clear tour. That was fun.
Cool. And then you got a Grammy Award. What was that like?
That was funny. We had been nominated 2 times already, and I was at Target. My wife called me on the 3rd time and said, "You're not going to believe this." I'm like, "What? What's up?" I thought she was going to have me pick up something.
Yeah.
She goes, you've been nominated for a Grammy again. And then I was like, okay, are you not excited? I was like, no, I'm not going. She's like, are you kidding me? I said, no, I'm not kidding. I'm not going. I said, you know what it feels like to go out there to New York or LA? You know, it was kind of back and forth,
Right.
alternating years at that time, and get all dressed up and do the limo and hotel room and, you know, just the whole deal, and telling everybody you've been nominated, you get there and you lose. And then you have to say that, well, it's just an honor to be nominated,
Right.
that kind of thing. That, by the way, that hurts when you hear people say that. It's hurting them to say that.
Right.
And so the third time, you know, she's like, I'm not missing it. The moment you don't go, you're going to win. So, but Schlitt felt the same way. He didn't go.
That's right. He didn't go.
Yeah, he didn't go. We were just, you know, the disappointment is just whatever. It's just heavy. So my wife wouldn't let me have it though, man. She was going to go. She wanted to experience it again. And because it is an amazing show. I mean, I've gotten to see Pavarotti live. I've gotten to see Aerosmith and Madonna. And I mean, you name it. It's the best of the best. So
Everyone in one room.
yeah, everyone in one room. So she was like, no, we're going to go. So I didn't fight it any longer. And I said, yeah, okay, we're going to go. But this is the deal. I'm not renting a limo. I'm not getting dressed. Nothing. Nothing. I'm like rebelling against it. So it's true. We had a friend of ours, one of Kelly's best friends that lived out in California. We just went in her like SUV vehicle. So it was like limo, 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 SUV, limo, limo.
Right.
So everybody's getting out on the red carpet. We're in a normal car.
Right.
And everybody's all decked out. I'm in a T-shirt and jeans. And mind you, like we're walking behind P. Diddy and J-Lo at the time.
That's funny.
And we're going in there and cameras are going off and all kinds of stuff. Of course, not at us, but at them. And we're walking up and we sit down, and anyway, a lot of time passes and we're there. So I was getting anxious. I didn't want to be around for it. So I thought, you know what? I will get something to eat. So I go get something to eat. I said, I'm going to go get something to eat. She's like, no, you're going to miss it. I was like, no, I won't miss it. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to miss it.
I'm trying to miss it.
Yeah, I'm trying to miss it. So I went out in concessions, man, and I took my time, and I ordered a hot dog and some fries and a drink, and I ate it out there. I don't think you could bring it in the area. And I just took my sweet time, and I'm like, all right, it's probably over. So I walk back and I sit down, and my wife turns right over to me, and I thought she was going to, like, you missed it. And she grabbed me. She goes, your category's next. I'm like, oh.
Now, I got to say, be thankful you have a wife that is excited for you.
I know. She still
because
is.
she was always so proud of you and so excited for you and always pulled for you. I can just see that. That would be the funnest thing in the world for her, to tell you you're next.
I know, man. So I sat there in the chair. I put my head down, like almost between my knees, and I'm rocking back and forth like Rain Man. And I'm just like, I'm trying to cover my ears, but I'm not, because I'm still curious.
Right.
And they read off all the contestants, and what do we call the people competing against each other? Just my peers.
Right.
Four other nominees. Yeah, nominees. The other nominees.
I kind of like contestants. Nominees, go ahead.
And the winner is, and your just heart stops, Petra. And I was so shocked. I can't tell you what I said on this podcast. But some explicit came out of my mouth. And the Foo Fighters were sitting behind us. And one of their wives was like, I think it was Dave Grohl's wife. She goes, I thought they were a Christian band. My wife just looks over and kind of like apologetically looked at them and said, he's just excited. And they were like, thumbs up. Like, oh yeah, I mean, we get it.
Well, back then they hadn't won 30 of them themselves at that point.
Yeah. So, oh dude, so it was a phenomenal night, man. So I get up there and I'm not even paying attention. I wasn't even paying attention to the show, but I start walking up the steps, and guess who's handing me a Grammy is Steve Vai.
No way.
Yes, dude, he handed me my Grammy.
Steve Vai handed you your Grammy? Oh my gosh, that is so cool.
Yes, it was surreal.
I
I
bet.
didn't even look at the Grammy. I was looking at Steve
Would you
Vai.
sign this, please? Can I get a picture with you? Hey, do you have video of that?
No, dude, there was before smartphones.
Oh my, no, I mean, like, was it pre-broadcast? Was it the awards they hand out before the broadcast?
It was before the broadcast. There's a
Oh,
picture,
okay.
but yeah, that the Christian music was never broadcasted.
Right. Well, there's a lot of them that are before. There's like 2.5, 3 hours before the broadcast that,
I'm sure it's somewhere in a tank. Yeah, there's somewhere in a tank somewhere. That would be cool.
yeah,
But so we go backstage, and they take your Grammy away from you
right. They do.
because they polish it up for the next contestants. Yeah, and then they hand you another set.
Oh, they give them to
So
you
I
there?
was like, yeah, they give you another set, and that's the set you're going to go into this other press conference room, and
Oh, yeah.
press is going to whatever, and then you do that a couple of times.
But don't they mail them to you though?
They do mail them.
Yes.
So I was there in a little room, a little corner nook, and I was we were waiting to go into the press as well, and some people were coming out of the press conference, and they were there. And man, right in front of me, I look up, and I can touch him. He's like 4 feet from me. It's BB King.
Oh, how cool.
So I just got my Grammy handed to me by Steve Vai, and then there's BB King.
Oh, stinking cool.
And he could tell I was starstruck. And I didn't know what to say or do. I didn't know how to act. I mean, what do you do? What's respectful?
Right.
And man, he walks over to me instead with a big smile and goes,
Oh,
congratulations. Like he's always wanted to meet me.
oh, that's so sweet.
And I'll never forget that. And it set an example of how I should always be with people. He acted like it was special to meet me, which was awesome. And then after I was over the shock, well, I was never over the shock of that, but I finally was kind of coming to my senses. Carlos Santana joined the conversation.
Oh man.
And dude, it was just a phenomenal night. I mean, when I went to the bathroom, I was peeing right next to Aaron Neville and then Lee Ritenour on the other side. All three taking a whiz. That's the Grammys.
6 words you'll never hear again. I wish I had a camera.
Yeah. You think I would have savored the moment the same if I'd have had an iPhone back then?
No, because you'd be looking through your phone instead of at the people.
I was so engaged with BB King and Santana. I mean, so engaged.
That's exactly why I don't regret not having cameras. Like, because there was a difference between a camera. You take a picture with a camera, you put it back in your pocket.
Yeah.
Take a picture with your phone, and they just look at their pictures. And they miss the moment because they're looking at the picture, even though the person they took the picture of is in the room.
Crazy.
It's just bizarre.
Yeah.
All right. So you got your Grammy Award. So what was it like after that? What was the progression to your solo album with Word?
That was funny. I was really wanting to go a different direction with Petra. And, there's some things musically, they weren't Petra, so there's things you couldn't do.
Right.
And you have to respect that. I mean, I know people, they use that excuse, there's just creative differences. And basically you're saying you weren't getting along, but that wasn't the case. We really did get along really, really well. But there was just some things I wanted to do. And at the time, I wanted to go out on a high note. I'm like, hey, I'm kind of reading the writings on the wall, and we just won a Grammy. It was kind of a greatest hits type of thing. And,
Right.
and man, I was like, I think it just feels right for me to stop here. I thought it was a high note. And so I started just writing some stuff that I wanted to do. And I didn't really have any solid plan, but I was at a label. I was at a label thing at one time. I forgot what it was. It was an industry type thing.
Petra was on Word, correct?
Yeah, Petra was on Word. And so it's probably a Word thing.
Yeah.
My memory with so many of those things that happened, I kind of lose track. But I remember being there, and I remember seeing this guy with a camera.
Back to the camera.
Yeah. Yeah, he had a professional camera. He was taking real shots of the whole event. And I was like, I was kind of just talking to him, man, and we really got along. We really clicked. And I said, hey, I'm kind of working on some music, and man, I'm going to need some promo shots type of thing, some headshots and stuff like that I kind of want to do. I said, what would you charge? He goes, man, I do this as a hobby. I said, I won't charge you anything.
Oh, man.
I said, really? I said, man, I'll pay. He goes, no, it's a love. I completely love it. So, hey, and so we exchanged names and whatever and stuff like that. And lo and behold, you know who he was?
No idea.
The president of the record
Oh,
company.
the president of the record company is moonlighting as a volunteer camera op.
Yeah, he just wanted to do it that night. And so that's how
Oh my gosh, Pete.
the record company, got to know me, and he was just real down to earth, and it just happened organically. And then he introduced me to the head of A&R, and it just kind of went from there. And yeah, man, it was a wonderful experience.
How cool.
Yeah, Lauren Ballman.
And by the way, that album is on Spotify. I listened to it yesterday.
I heard, man. I'm like, where's my check? I heard it was on there, and my kids told me the other day it was on Apple Music.
Yeah, after 43 million listens, you'll get a check for $12. Although I did hear, I think Trump signed a thing where it's going to be fair. Like streaming services are now going to have to actually.
I fought for a lot of my publishing. It better be more than $12.
Oh well, hopefully it will be. That's
I fought like a honey badger.
Right. So you end up doing an album. Now, tell me about that process. How was it? Because when you first joined the John Schlitt band, no one knew you could sing. And then all of a sudden you're doing a solo artist deal with playing guitar and singing. And you were actually on that album, you were singing more, or as much at least, as you were playing guitar.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you this. I didn't know how to sing. I didn't. I had to, before John Schlitt, I didn't sing. And you know that.
Yeah.
What with Petra, I had to step it up because it was such a, you had to do them Def Leppard vocals.
Right.
So Mutt Lange vocals.
Mutt.
Youngsters, look him up.
Study him.
Yeah. So what I was doing one time backstage one night, Kevin and I were goofing around, and we were mimicking John. So we were just doing all this kind of stuff, trying to sound like him. And we were pulling it off. And I realized if I kind of did the thing like he did, I had the range like he had.
Right.
And not to say I even come close to a vocalist like him, but that's where I learned how to sing. And of course, I had to sing above him to hit the harmony.
Right.
That's how I learned. So eventually, I did sing. Petra taught me how to sing, just singing live and stuff like that.
That's pretty crazy, dude.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
So just trying to keep up with Schlitt taught you to sing.
Yeah, I'm just making fun of Schlitt, making people laugh, and I was doing the whole skier thing back and forth as I was.
Oh, that's great, dude. So you do your album. Now tell me the process of the writing and the recording. And was that fun for you, being on your own?
Man, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of musical control. And when you're an artist, I don't mean that control like a business type of thing. It's for people that aren't listening, that are not creative. When you get full creative control, it is liberating. It is a season that you cannot describe. And so, man, I was just writing a bunch of tunes, and and that was a time where they were spending some time developing an artist. They were developing my songs right out of the hatch. They weren't all that great. They were okay. There were some bits and pieces, and it was like, nope, go back to this, keep this and do this, and keep this and do this. And so one of the things that I learned during that process to challenge myself in songwriting, this to be a little tip, is when I would write a song that I thought was really good and the hook was there, I would demote the hook. I would strip it of its glory, and I would move it from the hook, and I would make it the verse.
Oh, wow.
And it would force me to write a better hook, a hookier hook. Oh,
that's an interesting strategy.
Yeah, man. And I just got really good at real poppy type stuff. And so even, there was never a throwaway lines or a real lazy lyric or a real lazy melody, real lazy verse. Those verses at one point were, and not all of them, because not all songs developed the same, but a lot of them were choruses.
Right.
So that was a really fun process that I kind of picked up. I've never heard that technique from anybody else, but that's kind of what I started doing. I'm doing it now as I'm writing. I'm like, oh man, this is really hooky. Okay, boom, demoted to verse. Yikes, I got to step this up. That was really neat. Then it started hooking me up with some writers. I got hooked up with Chris Rodriguez. I walked in a writing room. I got a call one time, said, hey man, can you write next week or this week? Somebody's in town that wants to write with you. I'm like, yeah, who? It's like Jack Blades from Night Rider.
No way.
Holy smokes, man. So we wrote Icy Love on my record.
Oh, nice.
One of my favorite tunes. Man, that was phenomenal. kept up with him throughout the years after that too. And that was a good creative process back and forth. And then it came to like finding a producer. And I tried a couple of producers they were great producers. It just wasn't a good fit at the time. And you had to match me with something, like you said, I was probably such a unique type of personality for the CCM market.
Right.
You know, I wasn't raised in church, didn't go to church. Everybody I pretty much played with was like a preacher's kid, or, you know,
Right.
played in a worship band and stuff like that. And I remember John Schlitt at one time getting upset a little bit, like, Pete, I'm like, what? Because during sound check, he's like, because I was playing Hendrix or I was playing Zeppelin, I was doing, just check, because I didn't want to play Petra songs during sound check. You know, I keep those fresh,
Right.
because there's some fans in the audience and stuff, and he's getting, saw you got us that heated music or something like that. And I looked at him and I said, that's all I know.
Right.
And it hit him like, oh, you're not
Right.
like everybody else in the industry. And it was, so to match me with a producer, it was tricky. You know, some of the producers were so churchy that it just,
Right.
no telling what I look like to them.
If anybody wants to go listen to Pete's album from a few years ago,
Yeah.
go to Spotify and listen to Born Again by Pete Orta. It's a great record. In fact, my son-in-law was here last night and I played him some of it. He's like, man, I really like this. I'm like, it doesn't sound dated.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
It's almost timeless.
How did you end up on the Jackie Velasquez tour? Was she a word artist also?
She was a word artist. And at that time, man, there was the Latin explosion or Latin invasion, whatever they call it at the time. In the mainstream world, that's when J-Lo was out and Ricky Martin and Iglesias, and Enrique and stuff like that. And it was for me being a Latin guy,
Right.
that was a big deal. I don't know if it wasn't made a big deal back then. People weren't aware as much of different cultures as they are today. And of course that's sometimes going overboard, but back then, man, I remember the small group of Latin people, Nick Gonzalez and Jackie and the band that she had and me and Rodriguez. I mean, it was an exciting time because like, wow, to see kind of our culture hit the pop market, it was amazing. So Christian music at that time, they didn't want to take a lot of chances, and you can get on a soapbox about that. So they just copy the world, what the world is doing. So,
exactly.
So they were looking at the Latin artists, and I promise you, Jackie and I were the only Latin people in Nashville at that time. I mean, people never heard of a Mexican American, right? They were like, "What are you? Are you Hawaiian?" They didn't know. I didn't. Now it's a lot more diverse than that, but we're talking about a long time ago. And so, the record company was like, "Hey, why don't we put Pete over here with Jackie and things like this?" And you help, kind of launch off of that. So Jackie really was gracious enough to put me on her tour, stop in the middle of her show to introduce me and let me play. And I also played guitar for her as well. So it was kind of a win-win type of thing. And, there was very few people that could play her Latin stuff in town the way it authentically. So I was like the guy. It's like me or Chris Rodriguez. That was it.
Right. Now I remember I came to see you in Grand Rapids on that tour. And I didn't even know that Jan Eric was on that tour. So I got to see Jan, who I was on the road with years earlier. And then Denny was there, Keatsman,
it was a big show, dude.
Who I've known for years.
Big tour.
But what's funny, what I remember about that night when I came to Grand Rapids to see you, you introduced me to the bass player. And I want to ask you, was Abel Orta really your cousin, or did you just play me?
We think we're related because his family came from San Luis Potosí, Mexico, and so did mine.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, and we got the same last name.
Well, when you said this is my cousin and we didn't know it until this tour, I thought you might just be messing with me.
No.
That is so crazy. Your families came from the same city in Mexico.
Yes, and we have the same last name.
And he plays bass and you play guitar. That's crazy, dude. That's a wild story.
but I'm good looking and he's not. So that's the only thing that kind of threw us off. I don't know.
Oh man, that's great. That's the perfect way for us to wrap up part 1 of my conversation with Pete Orta. Join me next Thursday at noon for part 2.
Hey Rockstar provides digital marketing software and services for your church to generate more interest, create more exposure, and reach more people. Let Hey Rockstar amplify the awesomeness of your ministry. And, as always, Hey Rockstar is a proud sponsor of the Stage Right with John Thorn podcast.
Thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. I hope to see you next Thursday at 12 noon. Don't forget to like us and share us. Tell your friends about us. Have a great weekend. We will see you next week.